watching them cling to power while wrecking democracy. It'd be funny if it weren't so dangerous, but don't worry, we're about to shred their fantasy. Check it out.
Brace yourselves. Here's the left's full-throated attack on Kash Patel. Lies, conspiracy theories, shady financial ties, and dubious patriotism all thrown into one epic character assassination.
To give me an opportunity to weigh in on this nomination. Before I address Mr. Patel, I do want to address the continuing narrative about the weaponization of the DOJ, the supposed weaponization of the DOJ over the last 4 years, because to me it represents the most vigorous reinvention of history. The question is asked by some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, why is it that Donald Trump was the only president to be indicted not once, not twice, but 4 times? And isn't this, by definition, a double standard, a treating of this president differently because no other president in history has been indicted so many times? Well, the one doesn't fall from the other. Yes, this president was indicted more than any other president in history because this president committed more crimes than any other president in history. And let's look at what he was indicted for, because we can't just talk about this in the abstract. He was indicted for inciting a violent attack on the Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And yes, he's the only president ever to be indicted on those charges because he's the only president to have incited a violent attack on the Capitol. That doesn't mean a double standard was applied to Mr. Trump. It means the rule of law was applied to Mr. Trump. Indeed, the fact he was charged was a vindication of the rule of law, that we are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. It was an affirmation of that principle, not its abrogation. The fact that Donald Trump was indicted for bringing hundreds of classified documents to Mar-a-Lago, for refusing to relinquish them, for participating in an effort to obstruct the investigation into their unlawful retention, doesn't mean some double standard was applied to him. It means the same standard was applied to him as anyone who willfully brought hundreds of classified documents home, refused to turn them over, and then conspired with others to obstruct the investigation. Others who were involved in hiding the documents, others who were involved in trying to delete surveillance tapes. The fact that Donald Trump was indicted for making hush money payments to a porn star to hide this from voters before the election in violation of the campaign laws, the fact that he was the first to be indicted for that, well, probably means he was the first presidential candidate to be making hush money payments to a porn star to hide it from voters. And so let's not suggest, let's not market, let's not propagandize about some weaponization, some double standard when grand juries found probable cause to believe he committed these crimes, and the only case that was actually allowed to go to trial, the jury found him guilty on every single charge. Now, my colleagues on the other side say, we have to restore confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI because the public has such low confidence in them. Well, yes, of course the public has low confidence in the department. The department has been trashed by the former and now current president for years. Of course, with that kind of circular logic, there's a low opinion of the department and the Bureau because it's been trashed for years. And why has it been trashed? Because the people of the Department of Justice and the FBI had the audacity to believe what we were saying. That is, there is one standard for the rule of law. It applies to everyone equally. It even applies to the high and mighty. It even applies to the President of the United States. I've worked with the FBI since I was a prosecutor more than 30 years ago. They're the finest law enforcement agency in the country. I don't think they have any near peer. They are the best of the best. And to see what they're going through now with this purge, this witch hunt, is just awful for such dedicated public servants. And it's not just, as many of my colleagues have been emphasizing, it's not just that they were assigned cases they had no discretion about taking. Yes, that's true. But it's not just that. It's the fact that these cases were also deeply legitimate cases involving people who violently attacked this building, including, by the way, a prosecutor named Émile Bove, one of the guys leading this witch hunt. It was just revealed at the Southern District of New York, where he was working at the time, was one of the aggressive prosecutors working with the FBI on these January 6 cases. Now, he's the guy helping to lead the Inquisition in the FBI, the purging, the witch hunt. So this is what we're doing to the FBI right now. Now, Kash Patel was asked in committee, and he was asked after committee. We've already talked about what he was asked in committee. Let me just read the questions I asked him for the record and his answers. And bear in mind, this is just a few days after his testimony, or immediately after his testimony, and I asked, it has been reported that senior career officials across DOJ have been reassigned or fired since President Trump's inauguration. More than a dozen officials who worked on the special counsel team that investigated Donald Trump in 2 separate criminal cases were fired by Acting Attorney General James McHenry. Within the FBI, senior leaders were ordered to retire, resign, or be fired by February 3rd, 2025. Question, were you aware of these personnel moves before they occurred? Answer, not that I recall. Were you consulted by anyone at the White House, DOJ, or FBI about any of these personnel decisions? Answer, not that I recall. Have you had any conversations with the White House, DOJ, or FBI about these or other personnel moves at the FBI? Not that I recall. Okay, it's one thing if we're talking about events that happened 2 years ago or 4 years ago or 10 years ago. It might be appropriate to say, not that I recall. These were things, conversations he was asked about that happened days or hours earlier. He really doesn't recall whether he talked to people at the White House about firing people at the Department of the FBI? Are we really to believe he doesn't recall? And now, of course, we have whistleblowers who say that he was leading these firings, that he suddenly doesn't recall. That's just not the least bit credible that he doesn't remember. Of course he remembers. I don't recall, not that I recall. That's the language an attorney tells you to use when you want to perjure yourself, but you don't want to be caught in a perjury. This is who we're voting to make the director of the FBI, the guy who says, I don't recall whether I participated in ordering the firing of people. I don't recall. This is the guy who testified to this committee, I think, when Ranking Member Durbin asked him about his role in producing song with the people who attacked police on January 6th. I had nothing to do with the recording, he told us. Of course, we know because it was recorded. There he was on Steve Bannon's podcast saying, yeah, we took the recording in the studio, and yeah, we digitized it, we mastered it, we. And when he's confronted with this during the committee, he gives us the novel defense, we doesn't include me. We doesn't include me now. I don't know what's worse, the fact that Kash Patel wanted to take credit for making a song with convicted felons who attacked police officers, or wanted to take credit for something he never did, or he did it and he lied about it. But either way, it's pretty damning for anyone, let alone someone who would be the director of the FBI. This is a guy also who was called before the grand jury, first probably nominee for FBI director in history, called before the grand jury, refused to testify in a criminal case without getting immunity. Plead the fifth, demanded immunity. This is going to be the FBI director, a guy who won't testify in a case investigated by the FBI without getting immunity? A guy who has, I guess, stock options worth $1 to $5 million from a company financed by the Chinese Communist Party? And we still don't know what he did to earn $1 to $5 million from a company affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party, who made money from some Czechoslovak group, an arms conglomerate with ties to Putin. We still don't really know what he did to earn money from them either. This is really astounding that we are where we are. I've known Kash Patel since he was a staffer for Devin Nunes. He is not someone you would ever think of when you think of fidelity, bravery, integrity. Not when he was a staffer, not when he was in the Trump administration. In fact, the people who speak most damningly of Kash Patel are the people who worked with him in the administration. People like Bill Barr, who, for a lesser position, said over my dead body when asked about Kash Patel. It is just a tragedy for the FBI that it comes to this. I can't imagine the demoralization at the FBI and at the Department of Justice. The damage will be long, long standing. It seems my colleagues are determined to confirm him on the Senate floor. And to all those FBI agents I worked with over the years, to all that are there now that I've not had the privilege of working with, my heart breaks for what you're about to go through with leadership that you cannot respect, who has not earned your respect, who will not earn your respect. I know you will put your head down and do your jobs because you're professionals. I hope you stay at the FBI. I hope you don't leave, because if you're committed to the mission and you leave, then it's going to just leave behind people who are less committed to the mission. So I hope you'll stay. I hope you'll gut it out. I hope the same is true of the career professionals at the Department of Justice who are the subjects of a similar witch hunt. I spent almost 6 years in that department. I venerate that department. And we need the career civil servants, public servants who serve in both those institutions. But it will be a sad day indeed when we confirm the likes of Kash Patel, knowing what we are getting. We will have no one but ourselves to blame. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I will close with this commentary. We've talked about and listened to people hypothesizing about Patel taking leads from the White House.
What we've just witnessed is the quintessential Democrat performance, a spectacular display of fear, misinformation, and personal attacks aimed at destroying Kash Patel's credibility before he even takes office. Right off the bat, the senator frames the narrative as the vigorous reinvention of history, specifically targeting the weaponization of the DOJ under Trump. But this claim quickly crumbles under its own hypocrisy. The senator asks why Trump was indicted 4 times and claims it's because Trump committed more crimes than any other president. No evidence, just bold-faced assertions designed to poison the well. Remember, these are the same people who never seriously investigated Hunter Biden's laptop, never prosecuted the real FBI and DOJ abuses during Russiagate, and consistently weaponized federal law enforcement against their political enemies. To call Trump the most criminal president is a grotesque rewriting of reality, straight from the Democrat playbook. The senator claims Trump incited a violent attack on the Capitol. This lies at the heart of their justification for every political prosecution since. But independent investigations and court rulings have exposed massive inconsistencies and abuses in this narrative. The peaceful transfer of power argument sounds noble until you realize it's being used to criminalize political dissent and silence half the country. Moving on to the classified documents case, the senator insists that Trump was treated the same as anyone else who mishandled classified materials. Yet context matters. No president before was subjected to the kind of FBI raids and leaks Trump faced. They weaponized the DOJ to create a criminal case before Trump ever had a chance to defend himself properly. This is not rule of law. This is selective enforcement on steroids. Then there's the hush money scandal. The senator points out Trump was the first presidential candidate indicted for this, ignoring that politicians from both parties have engaged in similar, if not worse, behavior over decades, often with impunity. The focus on Trump alone is politically motivated persecution dressed as justice. The senator then tries to frame low public confidence in the DOJ and FBI as a result of the department being trashed. But who trashed it? The very politicians now demanding absolute loyalty from these agencies while conducting their own witch hunts. The ones who tolerate corrupt officials inside the DOJ while weaponizing investigations against conservatives. It's a vicious circle of destruction they created and now complain about. The senator praises the FBI as the finest law enforcement agency, yet laments the purge it's currently undergoing. But this purge is cleaning house, firing corrupt agents who betrayed the agency's mission. The people who actually undermine the FBI are not those being fired. They're the career bureaucrats who weaponize the Bureau for political ends. The segment on Emil Bowe, the prosecutor allegedly involved in aggressive January 6th cases and now leading an inquisition inside the FBI, underscores the problem. These are the same people trying to keep Kash Patel out because he threatens to dismantle their power structure. Now, the senator's questioning of Patel's "I don't recall" answers about recent firings is straight from the lawyer's handbook for dodging questions, invoking "not that I recall" as a shield against perjury. We're meant to believe Patel is forgetful about key personnel decisions that happened days or hours earlier? Of course not. That's calculated evasion. Then there's the return to the January 6th prison choir controversy, the latest absurd smear. The senator accuses Patel of either lying about involvement or recklessly boasting about it. Either way, it's damning. But why focus on a musical recording? Because the left wants to frame any association with January 6 defendants as proof of disloyalty. They weaponize guilt by association to keep the witch hunt going. And just when you think it can't get worse, the senator brings up Patel pleading the Fifth before a grand jury and questions his Chinese business ties. The Fifth Amendment is a constitutional right, no admission of guilt. But the left's cynics use it to insinuate criminal behavior. The Chinese money claim? A conspiracy with no clear evidence, raised only to plant doubt and fear. Finally, the personal attacks come in. The senator's long acquaintance with Patel yields nothing flattering. Bill Barr's infamous "over my dead body" quote is brandished as proof Patel lacks integrity or bravery. That's not an endorsement. It's a smear by association, and it's intended to stick. The senator closes by lamenting the demoralization Patel's confirmation will cause inside the DOJ and FBI, warning of damage and leadership the rank and file cannot respect. It's a dire prediction meant to scare senators into voting no, but it also betrays the real threat Patel poses to the entrenched bureaucracy. He's a leader who will challenge the system, and that scares them more than any demoralization. This is not a fair fight. It's a political lynching disguised as a hearing. The unrelenting personal attacks, the weaponized questions, the conspiracy theories, all aimed at destroying a man who's already proven he's on the side of law, order, and American values. This last clip is the swamp showing its teeth in full display, using baseless claims, guilt by association, evasive answers, and personal vendettas to paint Kash Patel as unfit. They spin every fact, suppress every context, and weaponize every constitutional right to try to stop him. But this desperate flailing only confirms one thing. Patel is the real threat to their corrupt status quo. The swamp wants a puppet. They want a director who shields political cronies and keeps the FBI as a partisan weapon. Kash Patel wants an accountable, mission-focused FBI that serves the Constitution and the people. If you want to fight against corruption and political witch hunts, Patel is the man to lead that battle. Don't fall for the swamp's lies. Share this video, comment below your support for Patel, and subscribe for the unvarnished truth. Together, we'll push back against the political witch hunts and restore the FBI to its rightful mission.